I can still picture the moment I opened that letter as if it were etched in my memory. For a fleeting second, the words on the page swirled and blurred together, my mind refusing to accept the cold reality laid out before me. I blinked, desperately rereading the lines, clinging to the irrational hope that they might somehow morph into something less devastating, perhaps revealing a misunderstanding instead. Yet the truth remained unyielding, glaring at me as clearly as the ink itself. In that instant, everything I once knew, the life I had believed in, crumbled into a million pieces. But let's rewind a bit. It had begun as an ordinary day, one of those days where you expect nothing unusual to happen. Sunlight filtered through the half-drawn blinds, casting a warm glow in the kitchen, while the inviting scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. The house was serene, broken only by the faint hum of the dishwasher and the occasional scrape of a chair against the tiled floor. Isabella, my wife, was seated at the kitchen table, her legs tucked under her as she scrolled mindlessly through her phone. Framed by her soft waves of blonde hair, the screen's glow illuminated her face, which looked distant and absorbed in whatever captivated her attention more than me. "Morning," I called out as I poured myself a cup of coffee. The greeting felt mechanical, a well-worn routine. After years of being together, our mornings often played out like a rehearsed script. "Morning," she replied, her eyes glued to the screen, barely acknowledging my presence. Her focus was entirely on whatever she was scrolling through, most likely social media or work-related emails. It didn't matter. It hadn't for a while. These days, I found myself leaning against the counter, sipping my coffee slowly while watching her over the rim of my mug. She looked stunning, as always, the casual sweater draped off one shoulder, and her yoga pants hugged her figure perfectly, making me want to draw her close. But there was an unsettling feeling nagging at me. Isabella appeared increasingly distracted, her attention absorbed by her phone rather than by me. Sure, we still engaged in conversation and went out on weekends, but the spark that once ignited our relationship had all but flickered out. I convinced myself it was just the weight of work stress or maybe the fact that we had grown too comfortable in our routine. Isn't that something that happens in marriages? "What do you have planned for today?" I asked, trying to spark some conversation as I set my mug on the counter. "Not much," she mumbled, still glued to her phone. "Maybe I'll run some errands, hit the gym, then figure out dinner later." "Sounds good," I replied, but my voice felt distant, as if we were communicating from opposite ends of a long hallway. I glanced at the clock. 7:45. Time to head out. My briefcase rested by the front door, and my keys jingled in my hand as I picked them up. Isabella remained at the table, lost in her scrolling. No goodbye kiss, no warm send-off, just the sound of her fingers tapping on the screen. I tried to ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut. It wasn't always like this, but today felt more pronounced than usual. "See you tonight," I said over my shoulder. "Yeah, see you," she answered, not bothering to look up. The drive to work was a blur of traffic and the usual morning radio chatter. Familiar scenes filled my view, cars and families all hustling off to their daily routines. I parked at the office building, a shiny, sterile glass structure, and went through the motions of yet another day filled with meetings, reports, and endless emails. Hours drifted by, but my thoughts kept circling back to Isabella. That unsettling feeling in my stomach just wouldn't go away. Something was definitely off. Perhaps I was just being paranoid, but a persistent whisper suggested that our idyllic suburban life wasn't as perfect as it appeared. When lunchtime rolled around, my phone buzzed with a new message, not the kind I had anticipated. Just seeing the subject line made my heart drop. "Midnight. You deserve to know the truth." The message wasn't from anyone I recognized. The name on the email was Megan, someone Isabella had mentioned a few times, perhaps a coworker or a friend from the office. But this wasn't just a casual email. It bore a heavy, ominous weight that I was unprepared to confront. My finger hesitated over the screen before I finally clicked it open. That's when everything shifted. The contents of that letter burned themselves into my memory, and suddenly the rest of the day felt like a distant echo of a life I could barely recognize. Everything before that email seemed faded, overshadowed by the heavy truth I had just uncovered. But before that moment, it had merely been another day, a typical Tuesday in the life we had built together. It was the kind of day where nothing particularly noteworthy was supposed to happen. The office buzzed with the familiar sounds of ringing phones and the clatter of keyboards. I buried myself in work as I always did. My job in finance wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and provided enough stability to make me feel like I was doing right by both Isabella and myself. That's the bargain you make in life, right? You invest countless hours, grinding away for years so you can afford the house, the vacations, and those weekends spent pretending that everything is just fine. But looking back now, I see how we had both been simply going through the motions. That morning had felt like every other one, yet now I recognized the cracks in our foundation. Cracks I had stubbornly refused to acknowledge until now. By lunchtime, exhaustion had crept in like an unwelcome guest. The sandwich I'd hastily packed the night before, a plain turkey on whole wheat, sat on my desk, mostly untouched. My appetite had evaporated, devoured by the gnawing unease that had accompanied me from home to work. I absent-mindedly checked my phone, scrolling through a sea of emails in a daze. That's when Megan's message flashed across the screen. For a moment, I hoped it might relate to something work-related, perhaps an update on a project that involved Isabella and required my attention. But the subject line struck me like a blow to the gut. "You deserve to know the truth." I froze, confusion swirling in my mind. What truth? What was I meant to learn? My heart raced as I opened the email, which was a brief, stark message radiating urgency, hitting me like a punch. "Hi. You don't know me, but I think you should be aware of something regarding Isabella. I work with her, and I've seen things I can no longer keep to myself. She's been seeing someone else for a significant period. I'm really sorry, but you need to know." That was it. No details, no elaboration. Just those chilling sentences that sent my mind reeling. My stomach churned as the implications of her words settled in. Isabella was cheating on me. My wife. The woman I'd built a life with over the last 7 years. Suddenly, all the signs, the distance, the late nights, the endless hours glued to her phone, fell into place. I sat there, staring blankly at my screen, the sandwich entirely forgotten. The noise of the office faded into a blur as the weight of what I had just read engulfed my thoughts. I wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, but what could I possibly say? "Did you cheat on me?" It sounded ridiculous, like something out of a cliché drama. Yet there it was, printed in stark reality, and I struggled to absorb it. The remainder of the afternoon dragged on, and I wandered through work like a ghost, my mind clouded with doubt and questions. Who was she seeing? How long had this betrayal been going on? Was Megan even telling the truth? Or was this some cruel joke aimed at shattering my marriage? Deep down, though, I had sensed something was off for a while, and I had chosen to ignore it. When I finally left the office, night had fallen outside. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity, battling the anger and confusion swirling within me. My thoughts raced through every conceivable scenario, trying to make sense of how Isabella could betray me, why she would choose this path. I replayed the last few months in my head, the way she had become increasingly distant, how her phone always seemed to absorb her attention whenever I was around. The nights she claimed to be working late haunted me. As I pulled into the driveway, the house appeared unchanged. The lights glowed warmly, the curtains drawn tight. Everything looked perfectly normal, like the picture-perfect suburban life I had always believed we were leading. Yet inside, I sensed a crack forming in our facade. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the front door, contemplating what awaited me inside. Would she welcome me with open arms as she had every night? Would I see the familiar warmth in her eyes, or would I catch a glimpse of something else? Guilt, regret, emotions I had been too blind to recognize before? Finally, I stepped out of the car, the heaviness of that email still weighing on my mind. The front door creaked open as I walked in, and there she was, sprawled on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through her phone as if nothing had changed. She glanced up at me and smiled, a smile that now felt hollow and insincere. "Hey," she said casually. As if my world hadn't just imploded. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to maintain the facade that everything was fine, pretending I didn't know the truth. "Hey!" I replied, my voice tight and strained. I stood there for a moment, observing her, wondering how I had overlooked the signs for so long. How had I convinced myself that the growing distance between us was simply the ebb and flow of marriage? That the late nights and secretive behavior were just part of life together? But now I couldn't deny it any longer. I was determined to uncover the truth, whatever it might cost me. The house felt unusually still that night. Too still, even with the refrigerator humming softly and the distant buzz of the TV playing in the background. The silence between Isabella and me felt suffocating. I could feel the pressure of that email weighing down on me with each breath I took. She sat on the couch, blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing inside me, oblivious to the fact that everything we had was hanging by a thread. I couldn't confront her just yet. Not in this state. I needed more than a vague email from a stranger to act on. I had to see it for myself to catch her in the act. I wanted to hear her lies spill from her lips before deciding how to move forward. My fists clenched tightly, nails digging into my palms as I watched her mindlessly scroll through her phone. How many times had she sat there, texting him while pretending everything was fine? "So, what's for dinner?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Isabella looked up, startled by my sudden interruption. "Oh, I thought I'd just order something. I didn't get a chance to stop by the store today," she replied, her eyes flicking back to her phone, clearly uninterested in the conversation. She didn't even glance my way. "Sure, that sounds good," I replied, nodding without really thinking. My mind a million miles away from dinner plans. I was desperate for answers, and I knew exactly where to start. Over the years, we had let our guards down. Our phones had become an open book, left carelessly on the counter or bedside table without a second thought. There had never been a reason to suspect anything before. But now, uncertainty gnawed at me. After we finished dinner, a lackluster takeout sushi that neither of us relished, Isabella headed off to take a shower. The moment I heard the bathroom door click shut, I saw my opportunity. Her phone rested face down on the couch armrest, just as it always did. For a fleeting moment, I hesitated, a whirlwind of thoughts racing through my mind. What if I stumbled upon something I wasn't ready to face? What if I found nothing at all? But there was no turning back now. I snatched her phone, my heart pounding as I entered the familiar passcode. The screen flickered to life, displaying the usual collection of apps, texts, social media, emails. Everything appeared perfectly ordinary, just as it always had. Yet I had learned the hard way that looks could be deceiving. I tapped into her messages, scrolling through the conversations, eager to find something, anything, that felt amiss. Most of the exchanges were routine chats with friends, family, and coworkers. But then, my eyes fell on a thread labeled simply M. My heart raced as I clicked on the conversation. There it was, the undeniable evidence I had dreaded finding. "M, you looked stunning today. I can't stop thinking about last night." "Isabella, stop it. I'm going to get caught if you keep texting me like this." "M, what time is he getting home tomorrow? We could meet up again." A wave of nausea washed over me as I absorbed those words, each line stabbing at my gut like a knife. Isabella was cheating on me. My wife, the woman I had committed my life to for 7 long years, was entangled in an affair. Suddenly, everything clicked. The late nights, her distracted demeanor, her obsession with her phone. I had been blissfully unaware while she maneuvered around me, lying with every smile and kiss. And the most painful part? Her utter lack of effort to conceal it. The messages dripped with a level of intimacy that had been absent from our relationship for far too long. Inside jokes, flirtatious banter, plans for secret rendezvous. It all unfolded before my eyes like a haunting film reel. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she communicated with him, as if he were the one she turned to, the one she longed to see each day, the way she used to talk to me. Sickness churned in my stomach, but I couldn't tear myself away. I scrolled back further, needing to uncover just how deep this betrayal ran. Weeks? Months? I had to dig into every hidden detail. I retraced their relationship through each text, revealing how he had slithered into her life while I remained blissfully ignorant. They started with casual meetups at her office, but it escalated quickly. Coffee dates transformed into dinners, and dinners turned into secret late-night escapades. And here I was, frozen in disbelief, just as the water upstairs finally ceased. She would be out soon. My hands trembled as I closed the messaging app and carefully placed her phone back where I had found it. I stared blankly at the darkened TV screen, grappling with the enormity of my discovery. Everything had changed in a heartbeat. The life I thought we had built, the trust, the shared memories, the comfort, had all been built on a foundation of deceit. I couldn't confront her tonight. Not yet. I needed more proof. I had to see it with my own eyes. Witness how she would try to wriggle out of this when she realized I was onto her. I had been blindsided once, but it wouldn't happen again. Isabella finally made her way downstairs, a towel wrapped around her hair, looking rejuvenated as if she had rinsed away both the day's grime and her guilt. She smiled at me, that same smile now feeling like a facade. "What should we watch tonight?" she asked, casually scrolling through Netflix, as though we were just another blissful couple settling in for a cozy evening. I studied her, my stomach churning with unease. "Whatever you want," I managed to say, forcing my voice to remain calm. She settled on a mindless show, but I couldn't focus on anything except the heavy truth looming between us like a thunderstorm. She didn't know it yet, but her time was running out. I would get to the bottom of this. I would confront her when the moment felt right, and when I did, she wouldn't be able to deny a single word. The days that followed dragged on, each moment suffocated by the bitter reality of what Isabella had concealed from me. I replayed her messages with that nameless stranger over and over in my mind, dissecting every word, every careless promise she had made. Reading wasn't enough. I needed to see it all unfold before my eyes. I had to catch them together, feel the full weight of her betrayal crashing down on me before making my next move. I was just a pawn in Isabella's game, pretending to be the oblivious husband while she danced around with her lover, completely unaware that I had seen through her facade. But inside, my emotions churned like a volcano, ready to erupt at any moment. Then it happened. She casually dropped the news that she had a late meeting at work. Just another tired excuse. "Don't wait up," she said, flashing that practiced smile, the same one she used to disguise her deceit. "Sounds good," I replied, masking my irritation. I told her I'd order takeout and enjoy a quiet night at home. She brushed her lips against mine in a quick kiss, her thoughts already drifting elsewhere. I watched her walk away, fully aware she wasn't heading to any meeting. After giving her 20 minutes, just enough time for her to think I wouldn't suspect a thing, I decided to follow her. Her car was easy to spot. She always parked in the same spot near her office like clockwork. But this time, instead of entering the building, Isabella veered toward a cozy cafe, the kind we used to frequent back when we were in love and life felt genuine. I slipped into the shadows, observing her from a distance, my heart pounding as I braced myself for what was about to unfold. And then I spotted him. He was slumped in a corner booth, his back to me. I couldn't make out his face at first, but the moment I saw him, recognition hit me like a punch to the gut. The infamous M. When Isabella entered, her expression brightened, a spark I hadn't witnessed in months. She slid into the chair opposite him, leaning in with an eagerness that twisted my stomach. I felt a surge of nausea as I watched her reach out to touch his hand. Each laugh, each flirtatious smile she shared with him was like a dagger piercing my heart. This man, this complete stranger, had usurped my place in her life. Then, without a hint of hesitation, Isabella leaned over the table and kissed him. It wasn't a simple goodbye or a friendly peck. It was an intimate, lingering kiss, the kind she hadn't given me in what felt like a lifetime. My chest tightened with rage as I watched her lips pressed against his. Her fingers tangled in his hair, lost in a moment of passion. They didn't even bother to hide their affection. To them, I was a mere shadow. The fury coursing through me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. An icy fire that surged up, threatening to consume me whole. I imagined barging into that cafe, dragging him out by his collar, demanding retribution for daring to touch what was mine. I wanted to confront Isabella, scream until my throat was raw, and force her to feel every ounce of heartache she had inflicted on me. But instead, I turned away, unwilling to give them the satisfaction of witnessing my devastation. Not yet. I drove around aimlessly for what felt like hours, my thoughts spiraling into a tempest of betrayal and confusion. How could she do this to me? To us? After all we'd endured, all the promises we had made, how could she toss it all aside for someone like him? My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. My jaw clenched tight in a silent scream. But as the shock began to fade, something darker took root. The anger lingered, burning bright within me, but now it felt sharper, more focused, almost like a weapon. I wouldn't confront her in a moment of explosive rage. No, I was determined to make her regret this betrayal in the most calculated way possible. If she wanted to tear apart our marriage, then I would return the favor with a vengeance. That's when a wicked idea struck me. It was almost too perfect, too deliciously ironic. Isabella's mother, Diane, was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. Sure, she was older, but her ageless beauty had a magnetic pull that was impossible to ignore. Her dark hair was always flawlessly styled, and her physique was enviable, a testament to years of yoga and Pilates. I had previously dismissed her flirtatious nature as just her being friendly, but now, I saw it for what it truly was. Looking back, there had always been an undeniable tension between us, an attraction I had never dared to acknowledge until now. If Isabella wanted to betray me, I would show her what real betrayal felt like. Without a second thought, I turned the car toward Diane's house, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and determination. I knew what needed to be done. I had to make Isabella pay dearly. What better way to do that than to take away the one person she could never replace, her mother? When I pulled up to Diane's house, it was late, but the lights were still on, indicating she was home. I knocked on the door, my mind racing with the twisted plan taking shape. Diane opened the door, her expression shifting from surprise to concern as she took in my frazzled appearance. "Lucas?" she asked softly, her voice thick with worry. "What's wrong? It's late." I shot her a look that conveyed everything I couldn't put into words. "I just need to talk about Isabella," I said, my voice strained but steady. She stepped aside, letting me in. She led me to the living room, where she settled next to me on the couch, her hand resting on my arm as she listened intently. I opened up about the growing chasm between Isabella and me, the way she had changed into someone I barely recognized, and the tangled web of lies that had ensnared us both. Diane listened carefully, her eyes wide with sympathy and concern. "I'm so sorry, Lucas," she whispered, her hand moving to mine, giving it a gentle squeeze. As I looked into her eyes, I felt something shift. The way she looked at me was more than just sympathy. There was a warmth there, an unspoken connection that had lingered beneath the surface, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. Without a moment's hesitation, I leaned in closer, instincts overtaking my better judgment. When my lips met hers, the kiss was anything but innocent. She hesitated for a heartbeat, her breath hitching in surprise, but then that hesitation melted away. Her hands found my shoulders, pulling me in with an urgency that mirrored the pent-up tension and betrayal we had both been suppressing for so long. As I pushed her back against the couch, my hands roamed over her body with a fierce intensity. Diane moaned softly beneath me, and in that moment, guilt evaporated into nothingness. There was only a raw, burning desire to reclaim what felt irretrievably lost, something that had been stolen from me. Diane responded eagerly to my touch, her skin warm and inviting as I kissed down her neck, savoring the intoxicating mix of salt and sweetness. It felt as if we had been waiting for this moment forever, the air thick with lust and the heady scent of revenge. I knew this would cut deeper into Isabella than any words I could ever say. This was the ultimate act of betrayal, one she would never see coming. That thought sent a wicked thrill coursing through me. Diane gasped my name, arching her back under my weight as we surrendered to the heat of the moment. Each kiss and caress transformed into an exquisite act of vengeance, and as I held her close, images of Isabella invaded my mind. I could almost see her expression when the truth crashed down, just as my own world had been shattered. In the days that followed my night with Diane, I was caught in a whirlwind of satisfaction and simmering rage. The memory of her warmth fueled a cold resolve within me, igniting a plan to dismantle Isabella's life piece by piece. But I was patient. There was no need to rush. Isabella remained blissfully ignorant of my knowledge or the line I had crossed, one she would never be able to recover from. Soon enough, she would understand the magnitude of my revenge. One evening, Isabella returned home after yet another supposed late meeting, her lies now as transparent as glass. Each excuse slipped from her lips with such practiced ease that it made my skin crawl. I played the role of the dutiful husband, observing her every move, fully aware that her world was teetering on the edge of destruction. As she stepped into the living room, I noticed the flicker of panic in her eyes and the slight hesitation in her movements. Something was amiss, and she sensed it deep down. "Hey," she said softly, trying to project calm, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "How was your day?" I cut through the small talk with a voice that was steady and firm. "We need to talk." Isabella froze, her hands gripping the strap of her bag like a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, she truly looked at me. Really looked. Maybe she saw the storm brewing behind my eyes because the color drained from her face. "What about?" she asked, her voice trembling, small and fragile. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, my gaze fixed on her with unwavering intensity. "I know, Isabella," I stated, my voice as cold as a winter chill. "I know about you and him. I've known for quite some time now." Her expression shifted from confusion to fear, her face draining of color as she struggled to find an escape. What are you talking about?" "I don't." I cut her off, my tone sharp and unyielding. "I've seen the texts. I've seen you with him. Hell, I even watched you kiss him, Isabella. So don't insult my intelligence by pretending it's not happening." Her mouth moved, words tumbling out but failing to take shape. She was trapped, cornered with nowhere to run. "How could you do this?" I pressed, my voice low and simmering with barely contained rage. "After everything we've built, everything I've sacrificed for you, you throw it all away for him. Was it worth it? Was cheating on me worth everything you're about to lose?" Tears glistened in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Her guilt and shame held no weight for me now. She had made her choices, and it was time for her to face the music. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice quaking as tears began to spill over. "I can fix this, Lucas. Please, we can work through this." A harsh laugh escaped me, echoing through the room like a knife cutting through the tension. "Fix it? There's nothing left to fix, Isabella. You destroyed this. Don't put that on me." Rising to my full height, I loomed over her, my presence cold and unyielding. "And do you want to know the worst part?" Confusion flickered across her tear-streaked face. What do you mean?" "I slept with your mother." The words fell from my lips like a bombshell, detonating the fragile silence between us. Isabella staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth as if my confession had struck her physically. She stared at me, eyes wide, disbelief and horror warring for dominance on her features. "What?" she stammered, shaking her head as if denial could alter reality. "No, you're lying." I stepped closer, locking my eyes onto hers. "I'm not lying, Isabella. While you were off with your little lover, I was with Diane. And you know what? She was surprisingly easy to seduce." Her breath caught, and her hand flew to her chest, struggling to breathe as the reality of my betrayal sank in. "You slept with my mother?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I nodded slowly, a cold smile creeping onto my lips. "That's right. While you were busy sneaking around, I was giving your mom what you've denied me for months. And let me tell you, she was better than you. A hell of a lot better." Tears streamed down her face, her body trembling as she processed the enormity of my actions. But I wasn't done. Oh no, not yet. This is what betrayal feels like. Isabella? I growled, my voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. This is what happens when you decide to screw me over. You think you can sneak around behind my back and cheat on me like I'm some fool? No. You don't get to play with my life and expect to walk away unscathed. She was sobbing now, a broken reflection of the confident woman she once was, reduced to a quivering wreck at my feet. Please, Lucas, she begged, her voice hoarse and desperate. Please don't leave me. I crouched down, bringing my face close to hers. Oh, I'm leaving you, Isabella. I'm leaving you with nothing. No home, no marriage, and no mother who can look you in the eye without remembering what happened between us. This is your doing. I stood tall, my heart icy and my resolve unshakable. She had shattered everything we once cherished, and now I had returned the favor. There was no turning back. I turned to leave, every step deliberate, savoring the final moments of my victory. As I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. She was crumpled on the floor, a wreck of despair, her world lying in ruins around her. I let the silence stretch out, allowing her pain to settle in before delivering my final blow. Don't mess with me, Isabella. With that, I walked out, leaving her to drown in the wreckage of her own making.